Hey guys, welcome to another week of our pod study talking through spiritual health. As you know, last week we talked through this idea of do you have a longing to meet the temporal and spiritual needs of others? And today we're going to continue on that theme of meeting spiritual needs, namely in the idea of the greatest spiritual need that anyone has, which is being saved from eternal suffering and moved into eternal life with Jesus. So the question today is, do you take seriously the reality that is hell? And this may seem like a strange question to ask, but I believe there are many, many Christians who don't take hell seriously. And even yourself, you probably maybe think lightly of hell, maybe don't think about it too much because it's not something that's fun to think about. In fact, you're probably inclined to think much more about heaven than you are about hell because it's human nature. We naturally don't want to think about negative things and just want to focus on the positive. So when we use the word hell in our modern language, it's usually meant to just kind of describe something that's very bad, something that's terrible. It's exaggerating language, but there's no concept in the Bible that's more grim, no concept that's more terrifying than that of hell. In fact, almost all of the biblical teaching that we have on hell comes from Jesus himself. So let's start this off by just reading a passage from Matthew chapter 25, where Jesus talks about this subject of hell. I'm going to read, it's kind of a longer passage, Matthew 25 verses 31 through 46. It says, when the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, then he will sit on his glorious throne. Before him will be gathered all the nations, and he will separate people one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And he will place the sheep to his right, but the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me. Then the righteous will answer him, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? And when did we see you a stranger and welcome you, or naked and clothe you? And when did we see you sick or in prison and visit you? And the king will answer them, truly I say to you, as you did it to one of the least of these, my brothers, you did it to me. Then he will say to those on his left, depart from me, you cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me no food. I was thirsty, and you gave me no drink. I was a stranger, and you did not welcome me. Naked, and you did not clothe me. Sick and in prison, and you did not visit me. Then they also will answer, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry, or thirsty, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and did not minister to you? Then he will answer them, saying, truly I say to you, as you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me. And these will go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous into eternal life. So there's a pretty clear divide that Jesus makes in this passage, that some will go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous will inherit eternal life. And many Christians have tried to dismantle this idea of hell that Jesus so clearly presents in this passage and in others. And there are theories of annihilation is a big one, that there's not really eternal punishment, there's just kind of everything's gone. Those who are evil are gone, those who are righteous will inherit heaven. There's the idea of purgatory comes out of this, that there's a short period of suffering that you might go through and that before you inherit heaven. And I mean, the idea of universalism comes out of this, that maybe there is no hell at all. Maybe it just doesn't exist. The Bible's just making things up here. But the Bible describes hell as a lake of fire, as this outer darkness where the worm never dies. Weeping, gnashing of teeth describes it as prison, as a place of torment. And some argue with all of these descriptors of hell. Well, all these descriptions are different things. They're not anything specific. Aren't these just symbols that Jesus is using? To which I would say, yes, Jesus is using symbolic language in these passages, but symbols of what? If these are symbols, they're not symbols of something good. They're symbols of something that's terrible. That's indicative of suffering and hardship and punishment. We don't have an exact description of what hell is like, but Jesus is using this language to describe the seriousness of hell. Another description of hell often comes about as, well, it's just separation from God, and that's the worst thing that could ever happen. But being separated from God is the desire of the unbeliever. That's what unbelievers want. I believe in a way God is present in hell. He will be administering his eternal punishment on the unbeliever with his divine wrath. And you might be thinking, with that comment, just at this point in talking through hell, well, this is just cruel and unfair. How could anyone be deserving of this? And I think in this instance, it's important to remember the gospel. Whenever we're talking about hell, whenever we're talking about eternal punishment, remember the gospel. That cruelty involved in inflicting is involved in inflicting a punishment that is unfair, but in the gospel we see punishment is well deserved. The entire point of Jesus coming to rescue us is because of our sin against an eternal God that demands eternal punishment, which is seen in hell. But God, in his great mercy, did not leave us to suffer. He sent Christ to die in our place, to suffer as we would have had to, and raised us up with him into heaven. R.C. Sproul says it like this. He says, "Hell is then an eternity before the righteous, ever-burning wrath of God, a suffering torment from which there is no escape and no relief. Understanding this is crucial to our drive to appreciate the work of Christ and to preach the gospel." So, what does it mean to take hell seriously? It means to take your own salvation seriously, and as we'll see in the coming weeks, it means to take the lostness of others seriously. We'll be talking about evangelism, we'll be talking about missions in the coming weeks, but any passion for these things will start with a right understanding of the seriousness of hell. Not as some far-out doctrine, not as something that the church has kind of made up over time to scare people into becoming Christians, but as something that Jesus talked about and that Jesus took seriously.